everyone, and namaste. Welcome to Unthink Me. My name's Adam. We are going to talk today about psychic states and how those can be realized and what they're like and how they can become permanent traits or stages of consciousness. In this case, what we call in altitudes the indigo stage of consciousness or level of consciousness. So we're going to pick that all apart. It is safe to say psychic is a little bit of a problematic term. This is because when we think psychic, we're generally thinking about paranormal, occult kind of stuff, telekinesis, remote viewing, levitation, mind reading. That's what we generally think of as, oh, I have psychic powers, I have psychic ability. Unfortunately, that's kind of why the word was used in the first place. It is referring to higher capacities of the mind. It is referring to seeing the unseeable. In our culture, we equate those things with magical and mythical notions, and we dismiss them on rational grounds. First-tier activities tend to miscategorize the psychic state as mythic, magic, or unreal. All of these are perspectives that arise from those levels. At the level of indigo, it is understood that the psychic state, the psychic realm, is the nature of reality. That this is a deeper, wider, truer reality than I've known before. And thus, when a person has their psychic state for the first time that they're aware of, they recognize it's powerful and profound, they think that they've woken up. They think their ego's dead, they're enlightened, they've experienced transcendence, and now they are transcended, and you never forget it's like riding a bicycle. This is probably the biggest misunderstanding. When we talk about psychic, I think this is the realm with the largest amount of misunderstandings. So if I start to sound like a freaking lawyer today, this is why. It's because I'm trying to clear up decades and decades and millennia of misunderstanding what is the nature of the psychic realm. When integral theory was devised, we're talking 70s, 80s, 90s. There was a decently flowing New Age movement. There was an enormous interest in the occult. And I would say that as a culture in the West here, it wasn't as clear to us what was real and what wasn't real. It took the test of time, the progress of science, the progress of thought, before we started to really categorize a lot of these things correctly. I'm going to argue today, in the early formation of integral, a lot of stuff was included in this psychic state and stage that maybe nowadays we wouldn't even consider that real. We would consider this magic and mysticism. Fair enough. This is also unsolved. Like, we can still say there are people trying to manipulate random number generators in laboratory settings. This is a thing that's been happening for a super long time. And sometimes a study will say, oh, they were slightly better than chance at manipulating random numbers. Sometimes that'll happen. Usually it doesn't. Certainly, nothing has ever shown any of these abilities to be provable, that any particular individual has them. Nobody would say that. Nobody would say that in a scientifically valid setting. So unfortunately, the rational skeptic has kind of won this round, which is to collapse the potentials of the mind that we don't yet realize, to collapse all of those into this category of paranormal occult. And this is a smart thing to do because we've been hoodwinked so many times. The streets are brimming with fake psychics, fake telepaths, guru healers, all these people who they have a business model that works off of belief, which is manipulative in nature. Whether you're coming from orange and you realize that, or you yourself are coming from magenta and you don't realize that, it is manipulative to claim that you have abilities that you don't have. It isn't a thing where you can fake it till you make it when you're charging people $170 to talk to crystal skulls with them. That is exploitation and needs to be understood as such. It isn't a thing we should hand wave off and apologize for and say, oh, it's just this neat thing. If you believe it, you believe it. If you don't, you don't. You're claiming credentials here. When you're doing your healing stuff, you are actually presenting paperwork and you have an office and you're on paper doing this. So then everyone has the right to call you out for snake oil sales. That at the point where you're selling it, the consumer has a right to push back. And I'm pushing back. I'm telling you, I have been, I was engaged for 2 years very intimately with the psychic community, which includes people who experience psychic states and fake psychics, people who exploit people for money using the same thing as stage magicians, trickery. Maybe they're doing it unconsciously. I'm not sitting here claiming motives for these people, but what they're doing is playing pretend for money, finding ways to socially validate that. I find it sad, I find it tragic, and I do find it unethical. My point here, the whole point I made, I've had Reiki healings, I've done Kundalini, I've participated in spirit journeys, sound healings, every kind of yoga, every kind of breath work. All of these things have valid, legitimate cultural modalities that can work to produce psychic states of consciousness. In the culture that I exist in, Northern American culture, every experience that I have had thus far was not that. It was not bringing you up to psychic levels. It's a show. It's bending spoons. And that is the origin of, this is where New Age comes from, Madame Blavatsky, people putting on magic shows, channeling spirits. This is all deeply intertwined with self-work and transcendental state practice, sometimes for the good, usually for the bad. If you or someone you know can levitate, see the future, talk to a ghost and learn information that you could not otherwise know, move objects with your mind, leave your body and communicate, any of this stuff, James Randi will give you $1 million to prove it. So I'm not buying it. Now, as we get into the very highest realms, if we get deep, deep into the subtle, if we really were to understand that, there might be some truths which would seem so miraculous and astounding that they would have the same sort of character as these mythical and magical truths. That's my point. That's where I'm coming from. I feel like when you have a psychic state experience, it blows your mind. It is kind of the archetypal mind blow, because the assumption you've made the whole time you've been here is proven false. The one thing you've been holding on to, that I'm this person, this is what I do, this is who I am, that is shattered. That is broken. Whoa. Okay, so what am I? Psychic. It's the psyche. You are the psyche. You are the total mind. This ego emerges within the psyche, just like persona arise within the ego. We can see that really easily, how ego creates persona. I go to the bank. Hi, I'm Adam. I'm at the bank right now. You know, I'm hanging out with my friends. Yeah, I'm Adam. I'm a cool guy. Yeah. Different persona, same ego. Likewise, the psyche, the total mind, experiences the ego of Adam as one of infinite potentials. The ego of Adam is infinitely changeable, does not need to conceptualize itself according to our cultural narrative, that I'm this person with this ID card and these credentials, this is what I can do, this is who I am, this is what school I went to, these are my friends, this is my family, right? All of that stuff is part of the ego story. Psyche stands above that, above if you like, deeper if you like, doesn't matter how you're visualizing it. So in psyche realm, in the psyche world, a myth or magic is experienced as just as real as a sensitive or rational truth. Now this might be kind of hard for you, because from rational perspective, you're at this stage and you're looking down on these stages saying those are untrue, this is true. But when you get up to indigo, you see all of these are relative truths. Actually, when you get up to teal, you see that, but indigo, you certainly see the entire constructed nature of the self is a relative truth among many potentials. So it is the same thing as all these other stages. You experience from a mythic belief position, you notice in your mythical structure, from your mythical being, you notice that some people embody the myth of the rational person. The rational person tests truths. The rational person doesn't believe in anything unless it can be proven using these rules of empiricism and rationality and logic and math. And so the mythic person may then say, wow, that's even mythologically that makes sense. That seems heroic to me. And now they're starting to feel into orange. They were thinking about it before from outside. They were trying to understand and comprehend it. Now they're starting to feel it. They're like, well, actually, I think this might be true rationality as opposed to whatever I thought before. I don't even know now. It just seems like I didn't really have it all figured out before. Now I'm at orange. I'm at that feel level. But I notice that I'm still living amber meme. I'm still living a mythical life because all I've done is thought about it and then felt it. Now it's got to become do. Think, feel, do. Now I have to actually act out my understanding. And that's all happen naturally. It's not like you put this all in a spreadsheet. This is stuff that'll happen naturally. This is development. Lines of development. I'm calling it think, feel, do. There's technical terms for it, and there's more of them. There's any number you like. These are all abstractions. And these lines all go through these levels. So, two of the really, 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 really big misunderstandings. One is called states and stages. This is a huge contribution of Ken Wilber. It's something that was kind of implied in a lot of cases and exists in many traditions, but he's really identified it as an important gestalt for understanding all of this. To walk through that again, amber experiences orange first as a state. Then it has to think, feel, do in order to accomplish that same realization as a permanent trait or an identity, something that you'd really have to mess with my operating system to get me to fall out of it. Well, I'm very stable orange, right? You're not going to knock me out of rational thinking very easily. It's sort of a default setting. It's kind of how, once it's been really think, feel, do, it's hard to get out of that habit. So Wilber notices in all of these cases, and in particular, the transcendent spiritual path described by so many different esoteric traditions, practically all of them, involves experiencing first an awakening to a state that goes away. You misunderstand it. You describe it incorrectly. It befuddles and confuses you. It becomes another attachment in ego. You get to that state again. Oh, wow, I am attaching with ego. State's gone. Now I'm a little more savvy. Till eventually, okay, well, I do this quite a lot now. This is pretty normalized. And actually, this is who I am all the time. That person that I was before, that's my old habit. Now I'm this. This is a stage. Wilber recognized that what we're calling psychic, subtle, causal, and non-dual categories, they're actually kind of almost like a body. All consciousness is embodied in some way. All four of these state realms have first a state realization, a waking up to it, a momentary fleeting glimpse that offers a little bit of teaching to the lower stage that you exist at. Then through practice, whatever you practice, you get better at. If you recognize over time, over exposure, you start going, okay, I kind of get how to get back to that state. I kind of get what's keeping me out of that state. I kind of see outside of the structure I normally see through now. And I'm seeing this is a pattern I know better than. Ego, I know better than this. Getting entrenched, falling lower. I know better than this. So as that new higher self that's developed to that level, stage, now I have this state as a trait. So he recognized this not only in the developmental stuff, normal childhood to adult development, he also noticed this in all the spiritual traditions. This is the justification for placing the third tier on top of the second tier, because they have the same character and they reveal higher, deeper, wider truths than the previous stages. So it's quite logical to put them there. It's quite unique and quite logical. So if it's wrong, then it's very excusable because it's a very creative idea. Wow. This, to be 1000% clear on this, you can have psychic, subtle, causal, non-dual states at magenta, red, orange, all the first tier stages. Now that's hard to do. It's a weird thing to do. It does happen. Generally, this person is flitting back and forth between this really high state and the cultural, social reality of the stage of what surrounds them. And then when they return to that stage to interact, to communicate, they then have to translate a very high understanding into very crude, low-level, dense terms. And so this is where religion comes from, is translating the transrational to the pre-rational. Unfortunately, integral theory is one of the few places where we're translating the transrational to simply rational, Just saying, like, as logical, rational achiever, scientist, empiricist types, skeptics, can we make any sense whatsoever of enlightened consciousness? Integral theory is saying, yes, there's a ton of sense we can make of it. Just understand, making sense of it occurs at this orange, green, teal, turquoise stage. It's not the state. I'm not enlightening you. I'm drawing a cartoon character and calling it enlightenment and saying, can we all agree that this cartoon character is essentially what enlightenment is? So that we can talk about it, so that we can legalize it, so that it doesn't become grounds for being institutionalized, so that it's seen as a normal and healthy thing to do, which it is. And I think that people are unfairly disappointed with integral theory and Ken Wilber because that's all that it is. It's translating the transrational to the rational. This is the second tier. It's not the third tier. It's not a guru. It's not teaching you these stages. Maybe you'll get that out of it. I don't know. But that's not the goal of it. That can be disappointing because you want to get to enlightenment. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Right? I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's just that nobody can enlighten you. I can't, Wilber can't, nobody can enlighten you. You might be able to. That's kind of the promise, right? That you might be able to do it. If that becomes an overriding goal, if that becomes your cause, then you're probably going to get the best mileage out of Vajrayana Buddhism, Kabbalah, traditions, yoga. Transcendental meditation is a thing, TM. There are science-based logical approaches, not science fiction, hopefully, but science-based approaches to the higher potentials of the mind. I would say that they don't really get you there. They're not particularly successful yet. So that's something that requires work and elaboration. Meanwhile, you can go hang out with a very, very healthy red meme shaman, and you can have one of these psychic or subtle states in a weekend. It's not the craziest thing. The translation of the transrational to the pre-rational we call pre-trans fallacy. Somewhere in the middle here is where we're looking from, orange beam, something like that. And we're looking at the transrational, we're saying, well, it's not rational, so pre-rational, myth, magic, mysticism, nonsense. Very nothing wrong with that perspective. I mean, it makes sense, and it's the Freudian perspective. It's very common to generally equate spirituality with immaturity and mental illness. Now, that's fair, again, because a lot of people with strong spiritual positions are underdeveloped in some lines. So you kind of get more development in some lines, and maybe you're min-maxing. You don't have as high a development in the more recognizable lines. I've seen this. I call it the pyramid with the shaky foundation, right? You got that eye on, it's working, the third eye, ajna, like that's working, but everything under it's crap, and you can't help yourself, you can't help others, you're just enlightenment in a bottle. That being one form of the pre-trans fallacy. The other being a tendency to equate lower stages with higher. So nature mystics will often equate these sort of magical notions with the sublime, or equate natural living, natural lifestyle, naturalism with spirituality, equating sex and sexual partnering, the red and amber drives, with the spiritual, trans, not pre, right? With the spiritual. Now, is there psychosexual involved with psychospiritual? Of course there is. Is hunger involved with spirituality? Of course. Everything's related, right? But the satisfaction of the sexual urge is the red meme character. That's the person. That's what it is. That's the archetype. So when using sex and sexual partnering as a vehicle for transcendence, you can be quite certain that you're in the wrong if it's a abusive power situation characteristic of red and amber meme. Just using your reason, it will stand to reason that a lot of people will be coming from that red meme trying to take on students interested in transcendence, basically trafficking them. This is certainly a thing. Look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. Guru abuse is extremely common, unfortunately. And I'm also talking about sort of cult situations as well. It's a very sad, sad thing, because what you truly want is transcendence, and this person is manipulating that Getting into higher realms of sexuality, tantric practices in many traditions, will involve sexual acts and acts of power and control as a medium in which to explore the transcendent. That, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then it's really likely, and this is all very confusing. This is why I don't recommend guru practice. It's sort of advanced to be able to scout out an appropriate guru. And if you're at that level, what do you need a guru for? There's a sort of codependency to the seeker in general where they think that they're going to be enlightened by somebody else. But if there's one thing that we say a lot, if there's one thing you should really get about life, is that nobody wakes you up, nobody grows you up. This is a thing, these are things that you do on your own. These are upper left pursuits. And what a beautiful thing. It's something you can truly take credit for. Something that you do to yourself. You choose to. And I would ask of anyone who's skeptical even of the psychic state, have you really tried? Have you really tried to invite yourself into transcendence and say, okay, I'm going to take a week. I'm going to take a whole week. I'm enlightened now. I'm the enlightened deity here manifest on earth. I'm so proud of that cosmically because I'm a god of the universe. Wow. This whole thing is just a gift. Just a big old gift that we've given me. Nothing can be taken away. All pleasure is already processed into pain. All currencies have been rendered. Time is over. Everything that you witness already happened. It's over. The self is over. Everything's over. This is transcendence. Is that exciting to you? Is that relieving? Is that liberating? Is that sad? Is it tragic? Is it filling you with grief? It doesn't care how you feel about it. If you think it's supposed to be difficult, if you think it's supposed to be easy, it doesn't care whether you find these things easy or difficult. What the psychic level will say to you, and what the nondual level will say to you, is that this is your nature prior to constructing an ego. So this thing that you're thinking of as a great effort or a great giving up or a great strain on you in some way, an inconvenience, whatever, this is taking the self as an assumption, because the psychic state and the non-dual state are relaxing out of assumption, out of embodiment, out of identity. So it's more natural. It's a relaxation. It's effortless. The reason you can't get there is because you're putting effort in without even knowing. You're unconsciously putting effort into rendering a human person. And if you simply are able to relax that effort, stop pinching yourself in this way. Become, first, pure mind, just everything. Then become pure consciousness. Not everything. Not that, not that, not that. This. Pure consciousness. If you retain that back into the physical, into the subtle, that is non-duality. If that sounds like I'm too simple or too cheap for you, yes, but are you doing it now? Are you capable of it now? You know, you might start taking it more seriously if you really try it. Try to stop being a person. Try to be pure mind. Try to be pure consciousness. Try to understand that everything written has been unwritten. Every pleasure it released itself already. It's over. Everything's over already. The moment you experience it, it's over. We're just on this knife's edge of new stuff happening. Always. But the attachment to the past is immediate. This is a habit we've picked up. This is the nature of the first tier mind. We attach ourselves to the things which happen, and we don't want them to leave us, so we consider them real, even though they're past now. They're not real anymore. So we live in the past. And Eckhart Tolle tells you to live in the now. I don't like the now either. I like the future. But I get it. That makes sense to me. Because it's only ever been now. It's never been anything else besides now. You may remember a time, but that's not now, that's the past. Because every second, every moment, it's now, every time, without fail. Stuff changes inside of it. It's still the same now, same old now, any old now. I want to introduce you to my little buddy, Cabington Bear. This is Cabington Bear, everybody. He's a sweet bear. He is single. Just thought I'd mention that. He likes girl bears, I think. He's probably pretty open to a lot of things. Anyways, Cabington just wanted to get you pumped for today. You ready to get pumped for today? Do you want to be pumped today? Let's get pumped together. Yeah! Give it to me. Yeah! All right, Cabington, that's pretty good. He's such a good bear. We love getting excited together. And I would encourage you, if you can, go. If you need to watch this, that helps. That's good. But even if you don't watch it, just in your mind, just, give him a pump someday. Just wake up and go, yeah, Cabington, I know you're out there. And I'll tell you, I see him do it all the time. He'll be over here and he'll just be like, yeah. And, he'll be over here. He'll just be like, yeah. He'll say it back to you. And I have witnessed it. I'll tell you if you want to know. So I call this stage the psychic intuitive. It's a very intuitive place, and you're sort of just, it's very kind of dreamlike because you're still kind of confused about a lot of the things that you've held as constants your whole life. You still haven't found that real equilibrium. So it is kind of an intense place. It's a sort of shamanic place. Psychic states, when realized as a level, after level 8 turquoise, 9 indigo, that level can't get there without having a sufficient competence in level 8 because it builds upon that content mimetically, holonically. Parts become wholes in order to get the whole psychic, intuitive out of the body-mind holistic centaur requires that integration. Now, but we said you can have a state at Red Meme and you can get to a fluency with that state where you could pretty much do it all the time, even at Red Meme. Weird, right? In terms of your behavior, in terms of the way you actually do life, you're still being Red Meme. You just have this state realization. So it's kind of a different category, and this is very strange. We all admit this is very strange, but as far as I can tell, Wilbur has the best model for understanding this stuff. Any level can have that state. It also can be realized as a stage, but the stage will be understood from the level. So the appropriate manifestation of stage 9 is after stage 8. You can do it anywhere. But if you haven't grounded yourself in 8, you can't really create a full culture and you can't really live in stage 9 fully all the time because there is not infrastructure for it. There is no community for it. You're a weirdo. You're a witch, a bruja. You're a wizard, Harry. And the psychic state is the first state, the first transcendent state. It's the first realization of the transcendent nature of the self, that it transcends ego. And at this point, people become very interested in spirituality and very confused about spirituality, most typically. And you can fall into a lot of bad places there. I warned you earlier, watch out. There is a lot of fraud in level 9 and above. Not real, but it's not that difficult to fake it, especially if you can't tell the difference. The psychic state is associated with an increase in theta brainwaves. It is often called the lower subtle. Again, I come at this all as a skeptic, and I always have. I did astral project. I did experience meditative states. They were quite transformative. They had a huge impact on my life. I'm familiar with a lot of this stuff. I'm really not trying to have any sort of authority or claim like that. In terms of sexual practices, I did what I understood to be Kundalini yoga. I read a book that I got at the library, and then I practiced the teachings in it. Kundalini yoga, first, pre-enlightened, pre-third eye stuff, because I was doing the third eye stuff in Zen practice. So I was doing these sexual practices, and I got to a point where on several occasions, I was able to simply lay on my back without any physical movement whatsoever. I was able to have orgasms and ejaculate. Sorry, there's no other way to put it. Sort of like a wet dream, but while awake, without any stimulation. And if I tell people that, again, I'm not trying to brag. I can't do it now. I haven't done any of that stuff in a long time, but I'm certain that I did do it. Yet that might be kind of hard to believe. And I think that a lot of this stuff is kind of hard to believe. And I think you're right to find that hard to believe. But I'm just out here. I'm just some idiot that has done a lot of weird crap in my life. And I'm telling you, Astral projection works. Lucid dreaming certainly works. That's not even really controversial anymore. Sex practices can do some pretty crazy stuff for you, sure. And a lot of this stuff, needs a little bit more, we really want to pick apart what's fake and what's real here and give more attention to those things which are more potentially real. I think that's what we're really thirsty for when we're looking for transcendence. We're looking at all these kind of commercialized consumer product kind of bullshit. It's all snake oil. It's all fake. And that's disappointing. But there really is a real thing too. So important to understand. That gives you, if you're after magic powers, that is psychic realm. That's what you can get that out of it. Sure. I mean, I would question your motives at that point, but it should be about comprehending reality, being a moral agent, participating in compassion as the universe, as animate universe, as animate flesh, spirit of the universe, inanimate flesh. What are you going to do? This is what I want you to get out of it. I don't need you to perform miracles. The psychic is concerned with all that stuff. And maybe if there's any chance of you seeing a ghost or remote viewing or telling the future, this is the way to do it. Get into the subtle. Get into psychic and subtle practices. Get spiritual. Understand what is coming from higher stages and states and what's coming from magical and mythic places. So namaste to you, everybody. I've tried to unpack psychic as much as possible. I want to do a video like this, basically covering everything James and I have said about the state structure, everything Wilbur said about it, just kind of one place. This is the psychic state structure, indigo, psychic states, how it all fits together. And I want to do one for each of the four, hopefully. Because I think that you guys are hot for this topic. We have a lot of stuff to do, but I also am very hot on this topic, and it's my pleasure to present what I can